Okay, so I mentioned recently in Pi News that I was going to order one of these Argon One M.2 adapters. They were out of stock in the UK at the time, and I had to order one from the States, but they're in stock Amazon Prime now and they're a bit cheaper. This is the case that it goes with, the Argon One case, which I don't have. And interestingly, in the description, it does say adds M.2 SATA SSD compatibility to your Raspberry Pi 4, only works with Argon One Raspberry Pi 4 case, which is sold separately. So I figured that it would work because it is just a USB 3 adapter, but I guess they're probably saying it because this adapter isn't going to work in a higher case, so something like the new DeSalvo case that I've got, or as you can see here I've got an Ice Tower cooler. It's not going to fit on there because the cooler is in the way, but there's obviously ways around it, and one of the ways I figured was I have a USB A to A cable, and that will mean that I can use it with pretty much anything. I haven't tried it yet, but I have had it confirmed in the comments of that Pi News that it is going to work. So I've been using this for quite a while now as an M.2 adapter, but I've really favoured the SATA adapter because the compatibility has been better. So this with an SSD drive just works with everything. I don't have to play around with any settings. I just install the operating system as if I'm installing it to an SD card, and it's been great. And I'm hoping I'm going to get the same sort of compatibility with this Argon One adapter. That's the whole reason I ordered it, because it is specifically for the Pi, and a lot of people have said a lot of good things about it. So let's see what it fits with. So I've covered the DeSalvo case, and that definitely isn't going to fit because there's loads of clearance needed here. But obviously on any of these cases I can use my USB A to A adapter. So this is just to say what will fit with this adapter. And the same really goes for all of the DeSalvo cases because they all have passive cooling, so they all have a slightly higher lid on them. So it's out for those with the official adapter. The Nest Pi 4 case definitely not, because all the USBs have been rerouted and everything, so there's nowhere that's going to go on that case. The Desk Pi Pro case uses a similar system where it's got this sort of tiny USB adapter to join up, but because the cooling is in here, there is an Ice Tower cooler, the lower profile one inside here. It's definitely not going to fit, so I would need that separate cable. Same with this Amazon acrylic case. It's not going to fit in there because it has that bit too much clearance at the top. I could probably do something, because this is Perspex, you could probably cut something, but it does involve taking the fan out, and that means you can't cool in the same way. The official Pi case I reckon probably would go, because although it's got a curved ridge, there is a little bit of clearance there, but also one thing I really like about the official Pi case is that it just comes apart, and so then you would have all of this exposed, so it would be reasonable on that, but not the greatest. Now I mentioned this case. This cluster case would actually work, and the great thing about this is because there's a fan on the back that pushes air right across the Pi, the drives and everything else, it would actually mount just above the Pi. It would just mean me taking off this 52 Pi Ice Tower cooler, which I added on anyway. I use this actually as a passive case. I pretty much never put this fan on, just the LED lights, but it is going to work with that, and there would surely be a way of fixing it in somehow, maybe putting an extra shelf in here, because I have noticed that this has got 4 screws, so it's going to come out of there quite easily, and that reveals quite a nice thin board. But I think probably the best one of all of them for literally just getting it to work is going to be this one. This is the Pwm Controllable Fan. So it's basically controlled by temperature, and it's got a heatsink on it as well. This was from 52 Pi, and if I sit this on top, I can just put the adapter in. So if I pop the adapter first of all in there, and then I can just slot it into the top, and because of the weight of it, and I put this Perspex bit on the bottom, it's in my video, it actually sits quite nicely. You can see that it's hovering, it's just above the cables there. There would be a better way of doing this, but this is super light, so I'm not worried about it. It does mean that these connections aren't as accessible, but they are accessible. The SD card slot is accessible, and obviously all of the rest of the USBs and the Ethernet is accessible. So I think I'm going to plug it in, and I can't remember what's on this drive, so I'm going to have a look. And I meant to mention, because it's got a fan and because it's sitting just above the fan, there's still clearance there, it's actually going to keep it cool. because whatever direction this fan goes in, whether it blows down or blows up, it isn't really an issue because it's just going to have some sort of air circulation. And M.2 drives can get quite hot, so I think that's going to be an advantage in having it in this configuration. So let's switch it on, and because it's handy having these switches on the top here, because the USB-C cable is underneath this lip. I can take it out and put it in, but it's just more handy to have the switches. So this should start up pretty quick because it's M.2 and you can see it starting up very quick. And oh, okay, so it was 64-bit RetroPie. Interestingly, this didn't boot on this cable, and that's kind of the pattern that I was getting with this cable. You had to do something to it to make it work. I've got a SATA fix video, and that works with that. So if I turn on my controller, this hasn't even been set up because it didn't boot before. So I'm going to put something else on it. I think I'm going to put Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit to try it out with. So let's just shut that down. And I need to pop an SD card in here. So what I think we're going to do is wait a second for it to shut down properly, switch it off, unplug this, because rather than mess about with things with it in place, it's probably just a bit safer to do it like that. Okay, so I booted up from the micro SD card, and obviously the M.2 adapter is plugged in, so this will be recognised by the system. And I'm going to write Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit to the M.2 drive. So let's go down to Start, Accessories and Imager. Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit I've probably got on here already. Use custom. So in my downloads folder, yeah, that's an older version, I think. Not that that really matters too much because I can do it and then update it, and it shouldn't take too long to update on an M.2. Yeah, 20th of March. Oh, I might have one on my USB stick. So if I plug my USB stick in, let's have a look and see if I've got a more up-to-date version. Now I've got usually some downloads on this Arconite USB stick, so I'll try plugging that in. Now sometimes this is the problem certainly with the other M.2 adapter. It's often crashed my system, but also I found that it sometimes crashed the system even with my CSL cable by plugging in another USB device or another USB storage device. So I've already got plugged in my joypad adapter. I've now got my USB stick, obviously the M.2 drive, and the keyboard is down the bottom, so everything is full up of connections. But it looks like it's working, so I'll go back into screen capture. Okay, so it's recognised it, that's a good start. Let's open it up and have a look and see. Oh no, I cleared a load of this stuff off. That's the 64-bit RetroPie. So I think I'm just going to write the image that I already had and then update it. I think that's probably going to be quicker than downloading the new file. Let's just do that anyway. So Start, Accessories, Imager, choose OS, Custom, 64-bit Raspberry Pi OS, Open, choose Storage. Well, that shows my USB stick that I've got plugged in, but also my Kingston M.2 drive, which is in the Argon adapter, and it says Argon on there. So let's click on that and hit Write. And yes, and let's see how fast this goes. Oh, I've got to put in my password. So it should be nice. Yeah, look at that, lightning fast. Now, with power, I recently mentioned that I started using my USB-C adapter from my MacBook Air. I've got an M1 MacBook Air, and it's a 30-watt USB-C adapter, but it doesn't supply 30 watts at 5 volts. So 5 volt is what the Pi uses. So you're actually still better off with the official Pi adapter, because the official Pi adapter is ever so slightly higher power, and it conforms to the USB-C standards. USB-C at 5 volts doesn't go higher than 15 watts. So you can't really get more power in that way. So if you want to add multiple drives, you probably are better off with a USB hub, and I'll probably investigate that in the future. But I was thinking a bit like a PC, if you bought a more higher wattage power adapter, then it could run more things, would give you more power. But that doesn't seem to work the way that it does with USB-C on the Pi, so I think we're stuck with it as is, so you can't go any higher. Although I'm not having any problems with this, and as you can see, it's booted lovely and quick. So let's close that down. Take out the micro SD card that it was running from, which is that one, and let's start it up with the M.2 drive. Okay, so that's booted up nice and fast, so I'll just skip through all the standard bits and I'll just set it up as normal. Black borders, and I'll skip that because I've got an Ethernet connection in. There you go, so that's downloading now, so I'll let it do all of that, restart it, and then do a speed test. Okay, so that booted up nice and fast, so let's do some speed tests. So go to Diagnostics and hit Run Tests, and I'll leave this in real time because it does it incredibly quick. You can see it's done already, shows as a pass. So show log, and you can see from the sequential write speed, random write speed, and random read speed, it is super fast. But I usually do 3 tests and take the best one, because I've done that on every SD card, SSD drive, all sorts of things, and I always do the same method. Right, so show log, let's pop that one there, and then reset and run tests. Let's do the third one. So what have we got? 28,000, 16,000, yeah, really good speeds. Right, show log. So let's pick the best. Now I always go on about random read and write because I think they're more important for an operating system. So the best speeds is usually the third one you get. Yeah, I'm going to go with this one. So let's close these down and let's just tidy this up a bit. So Argon M.2, and let's find some more results from some of my videos. So if I go to my channel on YouTube and if I do a search here for 240 gigabyte SSD, because I think it comes up with the M.2 with that search as well. Oh no, it doesn't. Oh yeah, there's the M.2. Right, so there's this video and also this video. So let's try this M.2 test. You can see the red casing there, and the results will be in the description. So let's copy that over. So much slower on the sequential write speed, faster on the random write speed, but slower on the random read speed. So still better results on the Argon M.2, but this is less about the fact that it's going to be much quicker because it is the same drive. This is more about compatibility because I've had such bad compatibility in the past with M.2, the cable rather than the actual drives themselves. So, and the best SSD test I've ever had was with a CSL cable, and it's my Kingston 240 gig. In fact, the Kingston and the Crucial are both very decent. So let's pop that in here. And you can see that the Kingston had a better sequential write speed, but the random write and read speed were definitely not as good. So yeah, the combination I've got here out of these three, the Argon M.2, the case is definitely the best one I've had in the combination with this Kingston drive. So yeah, that's very good to see. But now what I want to do is install different operating systems to that same Kingston drive. I'm going to put Ubuntu 8 on it, but I also think I'm going to try maybe Pinn OS or Berryboot just to try the multi-booting on it as well. So I'm going to boot up with Twister OS and see if it can handle 2 drives at the same time. So let's shut that down. So I've got no SD card in this Pi. I've only got the Kingston drive with the CSL cable, so the one that was in that test actually, but running Twister OS at the moment. So let's start that up. If I start it up with both in, then I'm not sure which operating system is going to boot from because they're both USB. So if I start it up like this and then plug it in afterwards, this will become a removable drive, and then I can write an operating system to it because I'm going to use Twister to write the operating system. So Twister's booted up, you can see now. So I can plug in that drive and see what happens having 2 USB 3 drives. You know, it's not that bad using it like this at all. You can hear the fans come on. The fan is temperature controllable, but if you don't have the script in there to control the temperature, it just stays on. So that'll keep it nice and cool. And let's switch back over to screen capture. So I'm using Twister OS to write Ubuntu Mate 2010 to the M.2 drive now, and as you can see it's motoring through pretty quickly. And then as soon as it's finished, I'll test it with booting Ubuntu Mate. Okay, so this is definitely the M.2 experience I was looking for. I'm running an SSD drive and an M.2 drive at the same time, no power warnings or anything. This operating system is bound to be overclocked because it's the one I use all the time. I would say it's probably running at 2147. So have a look. Yeah, it's running at 2147, so it's overclocked as well. And the fan comes on and off because I've installed the script on this to control it with temperature. So when it was writing, the fan came on to cool it down. So let's shut down, wait for a few seconds, unplug the SSD drive, and now if I switch it off and on again, it will boot from the M.2 drive with Ubuntu Mate 20.10, and hopefully it will boot nice and quick. One of the issues I was having with the M.2 drive before was the initial boot would take quite a long time. Sometimes I had to plug it into USB 2. It just was very incompatible. This is looking good, so I've had the blue light come on and it's come up with the information. I didn't see any errors come up then, so fingers crossed. Oh yeah, this is great. So no boot problems with Mate, and everything seems to be working nice and fast. Everything is as it should be. So I booted back into Twister OS on the SSD drive, and I thought I'd try and take this out of its case and see what the board was like on its own and maybe what possibilities there were. So if I unplug that one, I need a small screwdriver, so one is probably enough. Doesn't seem to want to come out. I'm going to try taking this screw out. Take the drive out. So I managed to leave it out with a couple of these. So basically I got this one in, and then I was pushing the drive side outwards because this bit's really tight in the plastic, but it has come out now. And I found a tool for getting this bit out. It's a 5mm socket. So the 5mm socket can take that off, but it's not really usable to clamp the drive in, because if you pop the drive in the right way around, like that, the way M.2 drives are, they spring up like that. So what you're supposed to have is a retaining screw to do it. So I could mess about with that, but I don't think I'm going to, because if I take that off and then put a screw in, there's still nothing holding it in place there. So I think I'm just going to put it back in its case and use it in the case that it came with. But it was interesting to see it out, to see what it was like, but it was super tight in here, but it wasn't any glue or anything, it was just the manufacturing of it, and it does seem to be really nice quality. Right, let's put it back together. Okay, so I'm all plugged back in again. I've launched Twister OS on the SSD, and I'm going to write Pinn OS to the M.2 drive. Okay, so let's see if I can remember how to do this. So let's look Pinn OS up on the web. I think the GitHub comes up straight away, or sourceforge.net. And then click on the download. There you go, so 46.7 megabyte download. Okay, so that's all finished. So what I need to do next is to format the M.2 drive. So if I call up Imager, choose OS, go all the way down to Arrays, choose Storage, that's the Argon one, and yes. Okay, so that's cleared off now, so I've got rid of Ubuntu Mate on there. So let's call that up. So this is the 120 gig volume, so this is the Kingston drive. And then if I go into my download section, Pin Lite is there. Pin Lite is the one that doesn't come with loads of operating systems already installed. So if I do Control A to select all of them and drag them over to the drive. The good thing about Imager is it formats in FAT32, which is compatible with either Berryboot or Pinn OS and lots of other things. Okay, and that's completed. So let's close all this down. and shut down, and I'm going to unplug my SSD drive and boot straight off the M.2 drive. Okay, so let's start it up for the first time with Pinn OS. There you go, so it's creating all the partitions and starting up in the normal way. And this is how it starts up. I've got an Ethernet cable plugged in. If you didn't have an Ethernet cable, you'd need to connect to your Wi-Fi network. But as you can see, there's various different options here already, under General, under Minimal. So you've got Arch Linux, Deyard Pi, we've got LibreElec, Lineage, which is the Android TV version. Games, we've got RetroPie, Batacera, Recalbox, Lacquer, all sorts of things on here. Utilities as well, and testing. So let's pick what operating systems we want on here. You can see that Lineage OS, so Android, got added to this. But I'm just going to go initially for Raspberry Pi OS 64 and Ubuntu Mate. Because if I pick loads of them, it will obviously take longer on the video, and this is already over 20 minutes, this video. So hit install, and yes. And you can see here that it comes up Raspberry Pi OS. You can see that it's downloading to install it, but also the background screen will reflect other operating systems as it's installing them as well. It's a really clever, really nice, polished system, but also Berryboot is great as well. Berryboot supports more systems, but I think I'm right in saying, I haven't looked at this for a while, it still needs an SD card to boot from. Just the initial boot, so it doesn't run the operating system from it, whereas Pinn OS, the whole lot is running from the M.2 drive. But I often get asked which one is better between the two. They're just different and they're both great. So Berryboot has got more systems, Pinn OS can run off one drive, and yeah, I like them equally. But if you want to know more about Berryboot, more about Pinn OS, then have a look at my channel. I've done loads of videos on both of them. Okay, so we get this message to tell us that all operating systems are installed successfully. And so if I click on OK, pick an operating system from the list. So I'm going to boot with Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit and hit boot. And as you can see, it's booting up nicely. That was super quick. So I ran through the normal setup and you can see that it's booted up and everything looks fine. So if I shut down and restart, I'll show you what happens. So when this shows up, if I click my mouse, you can see it's coming into this. I can press escape at this point and it will go into the boot menu, but there's loads of other options you can go for there, but they're in my other videos. Hit escape and you can see now it's asking me which one to boot. So this time I'm going to do Ubuntu Mate, hit boot. Okay, so Ubuntu Mate is working absolutely fine. It's going through all its first time setups. I've been really impressed with this adapter, the Argon One M.2. It's nice and fast, it's very compatible. It seems to be really good for power as well. So I've just been using this ordinary Raspberry Pi official adapter, and I've been using my SATA cable with it and two drives at the same time, plugged in USB drives. I haven't had any power issues or anything like that. So I'll definitely be using this in the future. There's still merit for SSDs. SSDs are cheaper and nearly as fast. So if you're buying multiple drives, then it's obviously still going to be cheaper to just buy a USB 3 to SATA cable. But I really do like this adapter and it does work well with this case. Anyway, I hope all this helps. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.